Do immigrants get due process in this country? Let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the resident legal diva, and this is The Breakdown. So, in another high-profile deportation operation over the weekend, the current presidential administration deported 17 people to El Salvador. They claimed that they were foreign criminals, including alleged members of Venezuelan gangs, as well as the infamous MS-13. They claim that this is a group of, quote-unquote, rapists and murderers. So this came on the heels of the March 15th deportation of 230 Venezuelans to El Salvador. This flies in the face of a number of federal court orders that told them, you need to stop. And that includes a decision by a DC judge blocking the implementation of the Alien Enemies Act, which is where the administration thinks they have the power to be able to do this. And this is an ancient law from 1798 that allows the deportation of foreigners without prior notice, because the current administration is arguing that this gang is invading U.S. territory. Now, did a video on this already, but let's remember that this is an act that's only been used during wartime. And this assertion that these gangs are invading U.S. territory and using that as a basis for the Alien Enemies Act is tenuous at best. So let's break down why this is so problematic. Let me give you an example that I've touched on previously. And this is the case of a gentleman by the last name of Reyes Barrios, who entered the U.S. after doing it the quote-unquote right way. He made an appointment with Customs and Border Patrol. He presented himself to immigration officials. He was applying for asylum and relief under the Convention Against Torture because he was actively protesting the government in Venezuela. He had been tortured and was an activist trying to raise awareness around the human rights violations happening in his home country. He came to the U.S., looking for safety, looking for shelter. He had a hearing already set for April 17th. And next thing you know, he gets scooped up and is suddenly deported. He was placed in ICE detention. He was accused of being a gang member, and the accusations were based on two things. His tattoo, which says Dios, which translated means God, and it was a crown sitting on top of a soccer ball. And the other basis was a picture from Reyes Barrios' social media where he was making like a rock and roll hand gesture. They somehow said, he's throwing up gang signs. He's definitely a gang member. Meanwhile, the tattoo was basically a tribute to his favorite soccer team, Real Madrid. Oh, by the way, did I mention he was a soccer player? Yeah, a little bit of a connection there. Also, he has no criminal history in Venezuela, nor does he have any criminal history in the U.S. If you are a gang member, you're going to have criminal history somewhere, right? Somewhere. You can't escape this life as a gang member without having some contact with the criminal justice system, whether it be an arrest, a conviction, something. So, going back to the original question, do immigrants get due process? Yes, they're supposed to. Everyone under the Fifth Amendment, everyone gets due process, whether you're a citizen, whether you're not, whether you're a visitor, whatever the case may be. Now, what does due process mean? That's talking about the right to a trial, the right to notice and being heard, being able to present your side of the story, the right to have counsel to be able to advise you, the right to privacy. And here's the hook on all this. The current presidential administration has not really been transparent about how they've been able to determine that these people were in a gang. All the government said was, the administration detained designated gang members identified through a rigorous process. Do we trust the rigorous process at this juncture? Not so much. Now, the Fifth Amendment protects U.S. citizens and immigrants against discrimination and rights violations that would be perpetuated by the federal government. And basically, the courts strike down any policies that discriminate based on someone's classification, like race, ancestry and any policies that infringe on people's fundamental rights. So the Alien Enemies Act at its core discriminates against immigrants because of their country of citizenship and more broadly, just because of their ancestry. So thinking back to when this Alien Enemies Act was used previously, it was used in the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II. And in those applications, Congress and the president and also the courts had to go back and apologize to the Japanese and German and Italian folks that ended up being rounded up and put into camps, being like, "Ooh, we're sorry. Yeah, that was really bad. You were targeted because of your race, basically. You were targeted because of your nation of origin." And they were like, "Yeah, that's messed up. Let's not do that again." Well, looks like we're poised to do it again if the Supreme Court does not step in and make sure to let these injunctions that have been in place around the country, preventing the administration from deporting more people, stay in place. Now, also, another issue with the Alien Enemies Act is that it runs afoul of the right to be free from indefinite civil detention, right? This was something that was recognized by the Supreme Court back in a 2001 case. And listen, we know that if this is actually at wartime, which is when, again, the Alien Enemies Act was designed for wartime, literally active war. And Congress is the only one that can basically bring us to war, and Congress has not said a word. So during wartime detentions are indefinite, and that's because you can't predict when a war will start or when a war will end. So that makes sense. And even sadly, during World War II, some immigrants were kept in custody for more than 10 years, even though they were civilians and they didn't do anything wrong. We've seen this in terms of Guantanamo Bay and how long some people have been kept in custody, even though they were never charged with anything having to do with 9/11. Same kind of concept, right? Well, here we don't have the designation of war. And, just more broadly, looking at the Alien Enemies Act, it really just hits to the core of who we are as Americans. We all want to be judged as an individual. We want to be judged by the content of our character and not the color of our skin or where we're from. We want to be judged for our actions, particularly when it comes to something as high stake as whether or not you should stay in this country or not, whether or not you should be returned to a place that you fled because you were being abused, because you were being tortured, because your human rights are being violated. You came here seeking assistance, seeking safety. And now you're being booted back to the place that is supposedly so evil without a hearing and without a chance to tell your side of the story. This is a slippery slope. Where does it end? Well, the Supreme Court's going to give us some inkling on that sometime in the next few weeks. Stay tuned. I'm Melba Pearson, the resident legal diva, and this was The Breakdown. Take care.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.